Now we'll turn our attention to using the cost approach to estimate the value of a commercial property. Just as we apply the cost approach to single-family residential homes, the process is the same for commercial property. Estimate the construction costs of the improvement as if new. We then account for physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and/or external obsolescence, and then add in the value of the land. So, process is exactly the same. Cost new of the improvement minus accrued depreciation plus land value. The rationale behind using the cost approach for income producing property is that no informed buyer would pay more for a property than what it would cost to build a new one. This assumes, of course, that they took the time to construct a new asset into account and the relative risk of ground-up development. The cost approach is often used for real estate assets that do not have an efficient or a very brisk market for tenants to lease space. A common example would be heavy manufacturing facilities. There is not a deep or broad market in automobile manufacturing facilities. Therefore, we couldn't estimate potential gross income. We couldn't estimate net operating income. I once had a friend that had to appraise a bell factory. Well, obviously, he couldn't use the sales comparison approach because there were no comparables. And he couldn't use the income approach because that market for that type of property was very slim. And he couldn't estimate net operating income for such a property. Therefore, he had to lean very heavily on the cost approach. When we use the cost approach for income producing properties or for commercial properties, again, we are going to use either reproduction or replacement costs. Reproduction costs are ideal for newer facilities, replacement costs for older. Remember that reproduction cost is the cost new to construct an exact duplicate of the subject property, whereas replacement cost is the cost new of constructing an improvement that has the same utility as the subject property. How are we going to estimate either reproduction or replacement costs? Well, our same four methods are applicable here: square foot comparative unit method, unit in place method, quantity survey method, index method. We're going to focus on the first two because we do have some background information on quantity survey and index method. We know the quantity survey method is very detailed, it's very precise, but that appraisers seldom have that sort of construction knowledge to be able to apply it correctly. And the index method is more of a check method, and it isn't very useful. It isn't very precise. It isn't very correct. So we're going to focus on the first two, square foot comparative unit and unit in place methods. Well, square foot comparative unit method is where we take the cost per square foot of a recently built structure that's comparable to the subject multiplied by the number of square feet in the subject. We may have to make some minor adjustments to that cost per square foot, but that's relatively minor. That's easily accomplished. Where do we find the cost per square foot? Well, oftentimes our cost estimating services will also have this information for us. Here's a couple of examples that I've prepared for you using comparative unit method. The unit in place method, on the other hand, is where we take the cost of the different components of a building and then add the cost of each of those components together to find a current cost. For a commercial building, those components include such things as the foundation, the floor construction, interior construction, heating and air conditioning, and all of these that we see listed here. Here's an example that I've prepared for you using the unit in place method.